Hello, adventurer. It's good to see you. You have made it to the morning grind.
Welcome, welcome.
It's the live stream at the beginning of the Geekverse, where we talk about all types of topics in geekdom, gaming, and fantasy, with an emphasis on being constructive and creating the things that we want to exist in the world.
It's all on the grind, Sizemore. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of adventures to be had today. Dungeons to explore and monsters to slay, and who knows what a random encounter might send our way. That's why we have to prepare, so settle in now for the morning grind with your favorite beverage in hand.
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Whatever you want. Pull up a chair.
Dude.
If you're feeling fancy, how about a cappuccino? Or a frappuccino? Or how about an espresso?
Just tea, thank you.
Sounds good to me, Gandalf. Whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here.
Everyone is welcome. You can just watch if you want. You don't have to worship anything you don't want to worship.
Thank you, Mike. But be forewarned.
Sometimes we get really strange characters around here.
Wait, what's that you say? Why can't you come and be a part of the stream?
My wife would disown me.
Oh no, I bet she'll be fine with it. Come on in.
Am I scared for my safety? No.
What are we supposed to do?
Everybody do the secret handshake.
Secret cultist handshake.
Oh, now do wizards who love each other.
This, my friend, is a science.
I still don't have gifts, but it's fine.
It's all on the grind, son. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
Dude, this would be a sick place to bring the band.
Indeed it would be, Dave. It really would. I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome, glad to have you here. Oh look, here's someone new.
Is this the cultist meetup?
Yes it is.
Come to hang out? Please accept me. I have nothing else.
Okay, we accept you. Everyone's welcome here.
Brought some snacks.
Well, that makes things even better.
You want some coffee? I don't drink coffee. You sure? It's cultist coffee. What makes it cultist coffee? I'm a cultist and I'm drinking it. Oh. Then I'll have some.
What exactly is going on here?
I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. It's so great to have you. Oh, and look, here comes another stranger.
Can we help you?
Yes, fellow cultists. I could really use some food.
Oh yeah? Welcome. We have donuts.
Oh, it's me. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sure you have a few questions for me, though.
What's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
Great questions, Rob.
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
No, not really. I'm just Heath, and I won't be worshiping anything this morning. But I will be your host. Welcome to the office. We're going to have a great time. I've got my coffee ready, because now it's time for the morning grind.
If you could become a fish, that would be amazing. Then I could command you with my mental fish powers.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the morning grind. Welcome to the office. I hope that you are having a good day. I have been. I was up this morning working on, well, actually some stuff for the Goodnight Sword Kickstarter, which today is its final day. So we'll be talking about that here. So I was working on that, and then I went back to sleep. I got back into, it seems like I'm just about to hit a biphasic sleep schedule again, which means, which is okay, but at least I am up and working. Let me put a link to the Ravenkeep Discord server if you are new here. I was seeing lots of conversations that I haven't gotten to read all of them in the Discord server, but it looks like there's been some good conversations going on in there. Though remember, it's probably unlikely you're going to change anybody's mind if you're talking about one of the topics that we've been talking about here. So consider it more learning and exploration, I think. But it seems like it's been going on here. A lot going on over there. Hey, Andrew. Good morning, Andrew. And Stray, who is all here. The Nose Place is here. Good morning. Wonderful. Glad to have you. Zero the Blade. Nathaniel is here. Welcome. Several channel members. Sable is here. And Robert. Good. Oh, Stray already got to the Discord server. So yes, open the gates of the Ravenkeep Discord server. Thank you, Stray. Good morning, Tomocrat. Last night we had a wind down. We did not. We have a wind down tonight to conclude the Goodnight Sword Kickstarter. But last night we had a table talk, which was uncharacteristic for a Wednesday night, but we went ahead and had it because Natalie, not Natalie, that is our sister, Michelle Smith from Force of Light Entertainment was with us because we wanted to have a conversation. We were having a conversation about good and evil, and we were trying to talk about our impact on storytelling. But it seems like when we have somebody new coming on the show for the table talk, well, it takes us a while to even get to understand the person, the kinds of the approach that they have to lots of the philosophical approach they have to what's going on. It was kind of like that with Lou. We started to talk about Lou's approach to storytelling. That was on Tuesday. We only got a little bit into that in order to kind of talk about that in the context of Moana and then also The Dark Knight. So we're going to need a whole day. But really, we need an entire episode to talk to Lou. I mean, when we started talking to Doug, we used a whole episode to kind of get to know his philosophy on, or his entire structure of Heroine's Labyrinth. So, and she had to go to another stream. So we only had a little bit less than an hour to talk, but she said she would come back. So that would be great because there's a conversation I want to continue there. But last night was great. Let's see what else is going on. So if you didn't see that though, and I need to clip more table talks. I was trying to decide how to clip more table talks. And I thought about putting some of them over on a new channel. But on the other hand, when it comes to RPGs and stuff, that needs to be put over here. I think the clips are getting watched. It just takes extra time. It takes a lot of extra time to get the clips done. Vince Leagued with Love. Your voice is very similar to Mr. Metacore. I love your content. Keep going. I don't know who that is. Love your content. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much. And Vince, I think this is the first time I've seen you in the chat. So you get a here's to you. So here's to you. Welcome to the Morning Grind. Hey, Chase. James says, looking forward to her return. I thought it was a great conversation. I like having good conversations. That's why I started Table Talk. Let's go ahead and breathe and sip until we forget. So I've got my drink here. Let's go ahead and breathe and sip. This is the mental health portion of the show. 2 deep breaths. There we go. There we go. I hope you did that with us. That's the mental health. Please do hit the like button. Yes, so what we're going to be doing today is looking at Amber, but I want to do it in the context of our discussion of RPGs. Because Amber, it seems like it was rather dense. And I've been meaning to take a look at Amber. It's been on this list for quite some time. I've been meaning to take a look at Amber, and I just have not been able to do it yet. So I was like, I need to do that now. There is a lot in Amber. It looks like we could spend a whole lot of time going through it. But I want to try to be a little bit more targeted to open with the kind of conversation that we had. Excuse me, it leads actually right in from some of the stuff that we were talking about, dice and randomness. That was on Tuesday when we were discussing that. We had yesterday world building, so I really wanted to continue Tuesday's discussion and lead right in with Amber. Hey, Micah. So we're going to be doing that. Let's go over. I have not even checked the Goodnight Sword Kickstarter. So Goodnight Sword Kickstarter. Let me drop this link in here, and let me bring up the Kickstarter page. I put a preview of the entire book in the Discord server. I put that out yesterday when we were about 24 hours. I meant to put that out before, but I created a preview. So I realized that this is for a younger style audience. This is a milestone in what we are doing here because there we go. This is the very first book that is out in the worlds that we are creating here. So this is the very first book in the Tales of Rapavania, or any of our created worlds, but this one specifically, Tales of Rapavania, Goodnight Sword, a medieval fantasy bedtime story, a world of gallantry, chivalry, and rabbits based on the classic story Goodnight Moon. We have 47 backers. I know that that's many of you who are here on the morning grind. So if you are already backing, I really appreciate it very much. This is, like I said, a milestone because this is getting started. So we got 10 hours to go at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Time. This should end at 8 o'clock p.m. So the final hour we'll do a wind down and then pilot it all into the conclusion as well. So this is for an audience who would like Goodnight Moon, but I know there are a lot of geeks out there who would like to read to their children or nieces or nephews or younger cousins or the friends or the children of friends, Goodnight Sword. So this is Goodnight Sword, illustrated by Adam M. Botsford. And it is produced as an animated audiobook as well. Brianna De Silva narrated it and then also took Adam's illustrations and animated them. So we have Goodnight Sword, the animated audiobook that's in here as well. We've got the ebook here, so you could actually be listening to that tonight if you need some kind of bedtime story. But for bedtime stories, well, we do have digital ebooks, the digital ebook, but then also I am doing the hardback books, and I will even sign some. And I see that several people have taken up on the signed edition of Goodnight Sword, and I really appreciate that. I already ordered yesterday a stack of some of the signed books because those have got to come to me. The books take 2 to 4 weeks to get printed and shipped out. So that's about what they'll take. And I wanted to go ahead and get this started because I want to be able to fulfill this as quickly as possible. So what I did is I went ahead and ordered a stack of Goodnight Sword to come here because if it's got to be signed, it's got to be manufactured. It's got to come here for me to sign, and then I got to pack them up and ship them myself from my house. So in order to go ahead and get it underway, I went ahead and ordered some of the Goodnight Sword hardback books to come here for signing. So that is already underway. We're doing quick. We're doing low drama. This is a low drama Kickstarter. I'm really a fan of that. That way we're able to do more, and we won't have to do one Kickstarter that like just one massive Kickstarter like I used to do that takes like a year or 18 months to finally resolve, like 6 to 8 months to prepare and then run the campaign, and then 6 to 8 months to or 12 to 18 months to conclude. Man, that is rough. That is rough. So, hey, Doug, good morning. Okay, so that is what's going on. Is there anything else we need to be saying? Oh, well, I guess there are other things that are going on. This week is crazy. This week is crazy. So we've got the conclusion tonight here on YouTube. Wind down. That's the live stream at the end of the Geekverse when we do Goodnight. So we'll conclude Goodnight Sword together. We'll have a hangout. It'll be a good time. We can talk about things too, whatever you want to talk about, and then basically have a hangout as that wraps up. And then tomorrow, so tomorrow's Friday again already. Unbelievable. I can't believe it's already June too. I lost last month. I don't even remember what happened last month. So next Friday, but that is tomorrow. I need to put the link up for this. We will be playing Hero Quest again, and we're going to start the Elf Quest pack. I failed the Barbarian Quest pack, and I don't think I can jump into the middle of it. So we're going to try the Elf Quest pack, playing the Elf Quest pack solo, and so I'll be starting over as the Elf with the Elf Quest pack, and we will see how that goes. So that'll be, of course, we'll have the morning grind tomorrow, but then tomorrow night at 6 p.m., we will do dinner and a board game. I'll be playing the Elf. But then also on Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Time, please do check the Discord server for this. There is a watch party of the Cultists. The Cultists is, of course, my comedy web show that is here on YouTube, but we're going to watch the entire first season. The entire first season is just an hour long. But RM is hosting a watch party for the Cultists, and it's actually going to be simulcast both to her Positive Fandom channel and also the Burnett Work. The Burnett Work is actually the one who's hosting it. She interviewed me for on the Burnett Work a couple of weeks ago, but now she's hosting a watch party. So I will also be there for the watch party to provide producer and writer commentary. The Cultist is, of course, my Lovecraftian comedy. That's what you see the clips from the beginning of this. So if you are interested in a comedy about people who are worshiping Cthulhu in a world full of people who just don't understand, it's kind of an Office-style mockumentary, then you got to watch. Zero the Blade says, I'm going to laugh if the Elf Quest pack gives you items that the Barbarian needed. Well, hopefully it's not that bad. Hopefully it's not that bad. But we will see. All right. Here, got my brush. All right, let's go. Let's go here. And then we might even do, I got tons of painting to do over here because I'm trying to get a Kings of War army going. So on Sunday, we might even do a Crafter's Corner. Let's see. Share screen. Let's go over here. Let's go ahead and bring this up. Bring up Amber. Okay, so when we were talking about Amber yesterday, or we weren't talking about Amber yesterday, we were talking about resolution mechanics yesterday. I know I'm not up yet, but basically we had come to, we were talking about randomness. One of the elements we talked about was randomness in RPGs, and I was talking about the reduction of randomness. And the Nose Plays was pointing out, or I had pointed out, that Frostgrave is basically the quintessential example of randomness. That's not an RPG. That's a skirmish game. But here is a game, and that most people that I have played with, even though I know it has a great following, the people that I have played with have not liked Frostgrave because its combat system, it is an active defense system, meaning that the player, we were talking a lot about that last time too, meaning the player who is attacking rolls to hit and the player who is defending rolls to defend. And we talked about, well, the advantages and disadvantages of that. One of the advantages is that it seems fun. And you can't discount that when doing game design. So it seems fun. But on the other hand, it does slow things down because you have to double the amount of dice required to resolve any action, or at least attack and defense. But it could be any action because Cortex, like we said, has you always roll to find out a DC of any task you're going to do. The game master never just adjudicates that. But it is fun. And then also, can you justify rolling active and passive rolls for every roll if you're doing the exact same random number generator on both sides of the attack and of the defense? I feel like I'm not firing on all thrusters yet this morning when you're doing both. And in that case, I said that I thought that perhaps both active and passive defense systems would work better if they were asymmetric. Hero Quest is a passive defense system because you roll to defend, but you've got different probabilities because you're trying to roll you're rolling different numbers of dice and you're trying to roll different symbols for both attack and defend. So you're always asymmetrical with your randomness in Hero Quest. I still think it's too random, but it works because you're asymmetrical in the randomness. With something like Frostgrave, you eliminate the asymmetry, because both players, the attacker and the defender, rolls a d20, and then they add a modifier to it. And these modifiers, in classic Dungeons & Dragons ways, are extremely small. They only range from +0 to +4. And only one character, I think, had a +0, and only one or two characters might have had a +4. Everybody's basically modifying +1, +2, +3, and you're just dicing down. It was a game about how well you roll dice. And that's why I think that's why I didn't like it. And that's why most people I played with didn't like it. Because, okay, the knight attacking the apothecary was the one that was supposed to be the most sure thing, because the knight's +4 to combat and the apothecary's +0. But if you roll a d20 +4 and then a d20 +0, well, the knight only has a 20% advantage over the apothecary. We wanted more than that. And then basically, Dungeons and Dragons, I was thinking about this yesterday after the show. Dungeons and Dragons is the reverse of that, or is the same thing, but it reverses same thing as far as the randomness, but it stops having an active defense. It adds a passive defense. Instead of giving you an active defense, it just takes 10 and adds that to an armor class, which is basically +1, +2, +3, +4 in a lot of cases, right? So you're just trying to you're taking a random number and you're rolling against some other random number. So even Sable Phoenix brought up, well, what happens if you completely remove randomness? Or if you're trying so hard to reduce randomness, what if you completely removed it? And I said, well, I don't want to completely remove randomness because I think there's an element of risk that needs to be there, especially when a character need to be able to, I want to be able to adjudicate that in some other way than non-random. That's basically where we were. Now, the nose plays was saying that what you need to do, the problem with Frostgrave, you're rolling a d20, which gives a big random range, but then your modifier is very small on that end, right? So your modifier is very small, which is very common in RPGs. We're going to have this big, massive random range, and then we're going to have this very small modifier, static modifier you're going to put on the end here. And that means that the game is largely random. And bell curve we talked about doesn't exactly help. It helps some, but it doesn't help the same problem. If you have a bell curve with an extremely random, a large random range, and you're still giving people small modifiers, that doesn't work. If you took the Frostgrave modifiers and you multiplied them by 10, it doesn't stop you from having the problem that still most of the characters are basically the same at combat anyway. +2, +3, +1, +2, +3. They're all basically the same, whether you're a knight or you're a infantry men-at-arms. They don't have that much variability. But I never see a game that does what Nose Play says, that in order to fix that in Frostgrave, assuming you were okay with everybody being about the same, about equal in combat, would be to take the modifiers and multiply them by 10. So somebody still has a +0 in combat, and they're just rolling a d20. That's very random, and also that's very low. But then you take the guy who's got a +1 and give him a +10. So you're rolling d20 +10. That's your base. That starts to feel better. You can see how that is. With we're now all of a sudden giving somebody a large random chunk. Excuse me. We're giving somebody a large non-random chunk, and then we're adding it to a d20 roll. So the knight would be +40. So if you have a static +40, the knight has 40 in the bag, and then gets a range of 20. Well, all right. That still may not be doing exactly what you want, but you can see in this extreme, this is not eliminating randomness. That's not eliminating randomness, but it is removing it. Because in that case, if you're fighting knight versus knight, then you are rolling a d20. Both of them have +40, and you're rolling a d20, and you're just trying to see who's going to be best, because both knights are equally good in combat. So that one's a toss-up, okay. But then as soon as like the knight fights, if the knight fights somebody who is only +20, who would be +2, but it's only +20 now. So the knight's got 20 in the bag. The knight's always going to beat the +2 guy, the +20 guy, because the +20 guy is going to be the +20 guy is going to be 20 plus d20, and the knight is already 40. So that guy cannot defeat the knight. The knight is always going to win. You're eliminating randomness for the game there. Now, when you're fighting the guy who's +30, the knight's fighting the +30 guy. The knight's +40. The +30 guy is 30 plus d20. So that could get that guy up to 50 if he rolls well. But the knight could still also roll well. Maybe actually in that case, +5 might, or multiplying everything by 5 might be better. But you see that point. Let me go over here to the chat. So that would be one way that you could fix that, and you could eliminate randomness. I never see stats done that way. I don't think in any of the game that I have any of the games we have gone over here on the morning grind have we had somebody when we're rolling a d20 have large blocks. Like maybe it is maybe times 10 obviously gives the example very easily for the sake of communication. But when you're talking about, maybe it would be +5. So that would be the knight having a +20 and somebody else having a +5. Maybe that's the right kind of range for the overlap of a d20. But I never see that. I never see skills in a d20 based system going from like +5 to +20. But you could, and that would start to eliminate randomness. My problem with that, so I'm looking at something similar to that, except for my issue there is rather than having such large numbers, because that does end up with such large numbers, you need to reduce the randomness. Rather than rolling a d20, that's a big die. What if you just rolled a d6? We came up with that example. What if you were just rolling a d6 as your random element, and that way you could have smaller static modifiers? Your math and your numbers wouldn't get so big, and you would still have the same effect. But we said, hey, what if we should take a look. I'm not trying to eliminate randomness. I'm not trying to eliminate it, but I've wanted for a while to analyze, well, what if you did? What do they say? What if you went to the complete other extreme from Frostgrave, and you end up with removing all randomness? I think you would end up with Amber, which just not only is it diceless, we're saying diceless, but it's not like it's cards either. It's completely non-random. And I just want to know, what's that like? What game design philosophies or game design elements are important here, and what can we learn, and are there things that we could apply to a less random game? So that's the context of going in and taking a look at Amber here. Let's see what's going on in the comments, because I see there was lots of stuff going on over here. I have not reviewed Power by the Apocalypse here. Not for any particular reason. I just haven't gotten to it yet. And it's been a long time since I have read Powered by anything, like the Apocalypse World. Yeah, so there's no Powered by the Apocalypse core, but like the Powered by the Apocalypse. I read a couple of those games, but it's been a while. We should take a look at those eventually, for sure. Kronos says the whole point of Amber is a story, and you and others place in it. You could potentially modify the game where you could put some randomness into it as a guide. So yeah, so we could do that too. So that's why I'm curious about it. So instead of, I've been looking at is what is our traditional kinds of role-playing games, some of which are very random. Now, how do you reduce randomness? Well, what if you came at it the other way and you said, here's Amber, and then what if you introduced randomness? Maybe that's a good way to think of it. I think it is. Kronos says, but life isn't that random. I doubt no matter what you say, a wrestler of low stature will always lose. But life isn't that random. I doubt no matter what you say, a wrestler of low stature will always lose. Almost always a top-notch one. Almost always to a top-notch one. That's the premise. Neutromancer says, that's why I like Fate dice. -4 to +4 with a skill ranging from 0 to 4 to 5. Now we could talk about what to do with Fate, because I like I said, I'm a fan of Fate. Yeah, it's a bell curve kind of system. It's not an equal distribution of -4 to +4, and so I thought that was the way to go as well originally. And then I got really looking into the bell curves, because I like Fate. I don't do it doesn't do exactly what I want, which is really the whole genesis of this idea about making this particular Fated Edge game anyway. Because Fate was close to kind of doing what I want, but it's much more narrative than I want. And actually, I don't think that its dice do exactly what I want. That's still, so -4 to +4 sounds good, and you got a bell curve around the middle, so you're most of the time rolling 0. Right, 0 to 1, heavily weighted towards 0 to 1 of the dice, because the dice, so every die has 2 -1s, 2 +1s, and then 2 zeros, and you roll 4 of them, and that generates it may not be technically a bell curve because of the number of steps or something like that, but a bell curve distribution or stepped distribution around the 0, 0 and -1, or maybe like -1, 0, and 1. So you're clustering around there, with your extremes being much rarer. But then 0 to 4, I would like to look at that more, but if your skills are 0 to 5 or something like that, that's better. That's better. But it might be even better if your skills were things like up to 10. So Fate like that would be better. If you're rolling that, your skills are 0 to 4. But if your skills are 0 to 4 or maybe out to 5, you still have, what's that, 9, a range of possible 9s, a range of 9. So -4 to +4, because you can also get 0. But your 4 is also, but a 4, that's only half of your range. If you doubled it, that might be better. Or 6s and 8s. We can look at that, because that gets closer to what I want, yes. But actually, in this case, the bell curve system starts to fail. So we'll look at that. We'll probably look at that after Amber. And in Fate, okay, that is active defense as well. So your opponent is also rolling -4 to +4. So you're both, there's symmetry in the random number generation. And we talked about what exactly is the random number trying to show. Is that elements for your character rolling, their character rolling, or it becomes easier, I think, just to go, here is a random element for the world. Yeah, exactly. The extreme a 10 times modifier makes the point. But basically, that's, yeah. Basically, if you've got +0, how often should an apothecary beat a knight in battle? Maybe it should be 0 times or very close to 0. And that's exactly what we're talking about. Well, do some players just want to roll? Because on a D100 system, well, maybe the apothecary rolls a 100 and the die explodes, and it's another 100 and the die explodes, and so forth, and the knight goes down. How often do you want that to happen? Arguably 0. Yeah, I don't know anything. Warren says, played an Ember game, a game that's hard to play without people who have read the books. And I have not read the books. So we're going to be sticking on the mechanics side of things. If you're using modifiers that are that large, you might as well use smaller dice. +5 D20 on 25% of the dice. You can get a similar effect by rolling D10. You're right, exactly. So that was, I think that may have come in. I agree. You don't see the large modifiers on the D20. Some people just like to roll the D20. Now, I suppose that would be a reason to do it, because you do hear when people are designing games, and Mark Tassin was talking about this about Cool Name, that some people just like the D20. The D20s are here. They're everybody's got them who's playing. People like rolling D20s. And so if you're like, okay, if this game has got to be a D20 because people like rolling D20s, then we're going to need large modifiers. But on the other hand, once you realize what the math is kind of behind it, then I'm trying to collapse, so that we're not dealing with such large numbers all the time. And you do exactly that. All right, let's bring up Amber over here. Oh, that is what the high modifier is, what the Farid system does. If someone a higher level than the average level NPC. If 10 is average for 60 points in D&D, and the standard array is 72, you're looking at +2 on average, most higher than average, some lower for the stat score. That only gives a +1 on average increase at level 1, though. Warren says, with no randomness, you can rely more on planning and counter-planning for character activity. Remember, Amber is a courtly plus PvP game like Vampire. Let's see. The nose plays. The only distribution that actually did what you want that we looked at was the advantage roll. Advantage rolls moves the shape of the results from a bell curve to a staircase. I do like advantage mechanics because they're easy. All right, I'm going to pause right there. So here is Amber. Amber, the Diceless role-playing game. And like I said, this means completely without a random element, because we're not also using like cards or something like that. This is first printing November 1991. So this is the original. I don't know if there are other versions or not, but this is the version that is from 1991. We might need to look at how, let's see, a complete new role-playing system, 3 complete adventures, attribute auction system. So I think we need to look at this attribute auction system where players bid against each other, creating a unique family of immortals. So that's not something we see very often either. So this is going to be an auction system. So we need to look at that. Enter a universe where pattern lets you walk to any world you can imagine, where logris tendrils can reach across infinite dimensions, and where shape-shifting lets characters sprout wings. A mature, demanding, and time-consuming system. Oh, that's a mature, demanding, and time-consuming system that puts character development above all else. That's what we're doing here. Do we have a character sheet? Yes, Amber character sheet. So here's what an Amber character sheet is. Physical characteristics, player name, Oh, look, I have never seen phone number on there before. Player name and phone number. I suppose if the game master is keeping all the character sheets, having a phone number on there would be good. I guess today we could also put the phone number on there to make sure that somebody could text somebody. I haven't ever seen that before, but you got to be able to contact your group. If the game master is keeping the sheets, wait a minute. How do we get in touch with Bob? Here's his phone number. Physical characteristics, height, hair, description, clothing, hairstyle, personal symbol. So attributes right here. So we've got psyche, strength, endurance, and warfare. We've got, looks like going to be a checkbox here, and then ranked rank, points, amber, chaos, human. Patterns are powers. Pattern, imprint, logos, mastery, trump, artistry, shape-shifting, power words with different point values over here. Advanced, each one of those. Sorcery and conjuration. Artifacts and creatures, personal shadows, allies, player contribution. Good stuff, zero stuff, bad stuff. So that's it, huh? Very different kind of character sheet. Let's go up to our table of contents. See, in this case, I think we do need to take a look at creating a player character. I think we need to understand this attribute auction so we understand how psyche, strength, endurance, and warfare are going to be generated. That way we know we're going to have these stats. And then the Game Master's Guide to the Rules of Diceless Combat. That should give us an idea about how this is exactly used. Game Master section, a guide on amber mechanics, campaign construction. Okay, yeah, so let's hit that attribute auction, and then let's go down to the rules of diceless combat. So let's go down to 12, page 12. Page 18. There are a lot of examples of discussion between the game master and the GM. The game master and different players. What did I say, 12? Okay, creating player characters. Let me check the comments here. Sable Phoenix says you can do some pretty cool math rolling with advantage because the average always works out to the number of dice divided by one digit larger. Paizo has a new version of this? Okay, so let's see. First of all, think about it. Okay. Step 2, bid for attributes. There are 4 attributes that define every character: psyche, strength, endurance, and warfare. Bid for your character in the attribute auction using some of your 100 points. Pay attention to the other players and remember who your rivals are going to be. Save enough points for the rest of your character creation process. Step 3 is buy powers. Using the points left over from the auction to buy powers. You can choose basic or advanced forms of either pattern, logos, trump, or shape-shifting. There are also 3 forms of magic available. Step 4, buy extras. Add extra details to your character. These include magical creatures or artifacts, personal worlds, shadows that you create, or allies that will help your character. Step 5, balance the points. See how many points you have left out of your original 100. If you can't come up short, you can chat with the game master about getting more points for reducing your attributes or by pledging player contributions to the table. If you have to, go back and change your powers and extras. Any points you have left over become good stuff and make your character lucky. If you have a point shortage, your game master can give you your character bad stuff, which will make your character unlucky. Step 5, take the freebies. Work up your character's looks, background, skills, and personality. Okay, let's figure out what this attribute auction actually is. Each character start with amber level psyche, strength, endurance, and warfare. And that was the checkbox that was by it, right? Points can be spent to raise these matching rankings or auctions. Change these matching ratings in the auction. If a player has made no bid at an attribute, that attribute can be sold down to chaos or human level. And if a player has made no bid in an attribute, then the attribute can be sold down to chaos or human level. Hope more on that is coming later. Amber rank. You don't bid and you don't sell the attribute down. That means you end up with an amber level attribute. That's great because amberites are so very much better than all those wimps out there in shadow. Wimps out in shadow. Let me look at my character sheet again. Well. Okay, so it's down here. So amber. Everybody's starting at amber if you don't bid, chaos, and human. So those are other checkpoints here. We've got a certain number of points that was used to bid that. Ranked, we got a rank here, but then amber, chaos, and human are over here. We're going to be checking. Okay, so an amber rank means you have no weaknesses. Amber strength makes you stronger than the Earth's strongest human. Okay, that's important. Amber strength makes you stronger than the Earth's strongest human. Amber warfare puts you ahead of every Earth swordsman or strategist. Same with psyche and endurance. Ranked. When it's not enough to be better than shadow mortals, you must spend extra points on an attribute and you enter into a contest with other amberites. Any kind of ranking, even just a point, puts you way ahead of the do-nothings with amber level. Dungeon Master says this game was amazing. You developed allies and rivals organically right from the beginning with bidding for stats. Baneson, hey, this may be the first time I've seen you in the comments. Welcome, Baneson. Good to the morning. Welcome to the morning grind. Here's to you. Okay, so when it's not, you'll be better in any contest with other amberites. Any kind of ranking, even just a point, puts you way ahead of do-nothings in amber level. Dominant rank. The first place holder in the auction holds a very special place in the rankings. Even if they're only 1 point ahead, even if somebody buys up with enough points to almost pull even with them, they are still way out in front when it comes to any type of contest. Those with a first place rank aren't just better, they are superior. Secret rank. You don't have to settle for amber or for your last auction bid. You can spend even more points on an attribute. This is a secret advancement, one that the other players will not know about. However, remember that when you match points with somebody who is making an official bid, say third rank, you'll always be slightly behind. That's what we'd call 3.5. Better than fourth, but inferior to third rank. First place rank being the best. Chaos rank. The common level of dwellers of the courts of chaos, also called below amber, equals the very high end of the human spectrum. Shadow Earth's strongest man, or the world's best fencer. Pretty respectable by shadow standards, but no match against amber rank. Selling down to chaos is good for an extra 10 points. So it's kind of like taking a disadvantage then. Human rank. Wimp out. Human level means the amber equivalent of a couch potato, which means something equal to an ordinary person of Shadow Earth. You become one of the masses of inferior shadow folk. Taking any human attributes is making yourself vulnerable. Human level rank is always dangerous because it makes a character vulnerable. Selling an attribute down to human level is good for an extra 25 points. Okay. So the attribute auction time, otherwise known as the bidding war. All the players get together and participate in 4 consecutive attribute auctions. In each auction, the ranking of the attribute will be determined. Just as Gerard is the strongest prince of Amber and Benedict is the best warrior in creation, so too will the players be the best of their generation of young Amberites. Once an entire group has been assembled for the event, there will be a separate auction for each of the 4 attributes. The first auction is for Psyche, the next is for Strength, then Endurance, and finally on Warfare. The auction rules. Here are the hard and fast rules of running an attribute auction. Be sure to explain each rule to the players before the bidding starts. All players start with 100 points. You can get more points in 3 ways. A, by selling down attributes. B, by taking bad stuff. And C, by contributing to the game master. A, getting more points by reducing attributes. Amber level in Psyche, Strength, Endurance, and Warfare is free. Chaos level is just below Amber. Going down to Chaos level is worth an extra 10 points. Human level is below Chaos. Going down to Human level is worth an extra 25 points. For example, if you plan on getting 10 more points by selling down Psyche to Chaos level, you can't make any bids at the Psyche attribute auction. You can't sell down an attribute after you've bid on it. You can't sell down after you bid on it. So if you're going to take the extra 10 points and you're just going to drop Psyche down to Chaos and not participate in the auction. Getting points for bad stuff. You can take as many points of bad stuff as your game master will allow. Every point of bad stuff you take gives you another point you can spend on your character. However, every point of bad stuff is also used by the game master to arrange for bad things to happen to your character. Bad stuff characters will be naturally unlucky and will enter the universe with enemies, problems, and misfortunes. Getting points for making contributions. Contributions are some kind of regular, ongoing chore. Oh, this is metagame. Contributions are some kind of regular, ongoing chore that the player promises to do for the game master. Examples include keeping a diary of your character, taking notes for the whole group, or drawing a picture every game session. That's interesting. I haven't ever seen anything like that either. So we have got some people who have played this in here. Every bid is permanent. Each player's highest bid is paid and cannot ever, under any circumstances, be reduced or refunded. No attribute can be sold down after it's been bid. If a player doesn't bid on an attribute, they can't later adjust it up or down. Once a player bids on an attribute, that attribute can only be raised, never lowered. Players can only bid for themselves. It's just not fair to the other players. If missing players want to participate, it's up to the game master to enter bids for them. The winner of an attribute auction is unbeatable. Whoever wins for an attribute is that attribute's ultimate winner among the younger generation. First place is the only safe place. If you get first place in any attribute auction, you will know that you are the best of your generation. Anyone after the auction can buy up, even spending as many points as the first place winner, but can never beat or equal whoever gets first place. Ranks are based on the attribute auction. Each group of players really sets up their own standard, and that's for their own level for advancement. With your bids, you are making the ranking system for the campaign. What you bid will determine how the campaign will be set up. The final result also determines how the characters advance later on. So here's how it works. It's a very folksy kind of rule book here. Here's how it works. Assume the final result for Warfare turns out to be 5th place for 10 points, 4th place for 18 points, 3rd place for 35 points, 2nd place for 50 points, and 1st place for 51 points. That means buying up Warfare later will have to match those point levels just as if they were rungs on a ladder. You can't possibly spend 20 points in Warfare. You have to match the bidder who bid the auction, so you can only spend 18 or 35, but nothing in between. Chase says points for brown nosing. Micah says Rules Compendium has roles for the players, but not points for doing it. James says, I actually hate everything about this. No wonder my group 86'd it. I love bidding games, but this feels more like employment. No thanks. Sable says, I'm finding it super interesting. Okay, bad stuff hazard. Too much bad stuff when you spend too many points can result in losing some control over your character's creation. If you have a great deal of bad stuff, the game master may end up with changing your character's powers, items, shadows, and background. How an auction works. Okay. Just in case you've never seen an auction in real life, This will explain how to conduct an amber attribute auction. Step 1. I'm glad it does explain. That it actually tells you what to do. You describe what is up for auction. At this point, the game master's job is to be a salesman, to get people excited about the product and how to make sure everyone understands how important it is. Step 2. Everyone writes down their opening bids. These bids, like any others, can't be taken back. The main point is to allow everyone an equal chance to get the bid before things go crazy. It's possible that someone could just shout out 50 for the first bid, freezing out all of the players. So the opening bid gives everyone a fair chance. Make sure to make this a modest amount. Step 3. When everyone has done their opening bids, the game master checks each one and announces the results. Step 4. After the opening bids have been reviewed, say open bidding starts now. Each bid must be higher than the last. So, for example, the first bid must be higher than the highest opening bid. Pay close attention to who says what. If things get confused, then the game master should stop the bidding and review the current bid, saying, stop for a minute. I've got Jill in first place with 21. Tim's in second place with 20. Tony's last bid 14, and Vince is still at 12. Hugh and Diane both make opening bids of 5, and they haven't raised them yet. Is that right? Okay, we'll start again. We're at 21. Do I hear 25? Step 5. Ending an attribute auction is always done with the following formula. Elaine with 40 has top bid in endurance. Endurance is going once, going twice, going, gone. Sold to Elaine for 40 points. At the end of each attribute auction, the results are compiled by the game master and rankings announced. Winners, the top bid of a particular auction will be winners, the top bid in any particular auction will absolutely be best in that attribute, at least among the player characters, and will be ranked first. The next highest bid is ranked second, then ranked third, and so forth. Players who have not bid should be announced as no bid. Tips on bidding. Hardly anyone is ever satisfied with the results of an attribute auction. If you don't bid, you'll regret not getting the good ranks. If you bid, you'll regret the points you spent. Still, what do you expect? You're competing with other players. No matter how unhappy you are with the results, remember that every bid you make throws a monkey wrench in somebody else's private plans. Bid points are spent points. It's not just the winner, the player who gets first place, who pays. Every item you bid, you spend points. At the end of the auction, your highest bid buys you the rank. Warning, once you make a bid, you've effectively spent the points. There is no taking it back. No, I didn't mean it. All actions are final sales with no returns, credits, or exchanges. You can't take back the points after they've been bid in an auction. Well, we're only in character creation at the moment. So, yeah, suddenly urged to sound like a cattle auctioneer. Well, I wonder how time-consuming it is compared to, like, creating a GURPS character or something. At least everybody is being active at the same time. Yeah, so this is meant to be 100% PvP during character creation. Bid according to a plan. Start high if you really want to have first place. Start low if you want just a ranking. Budget your points in advance. It's a good idea to figure out how many points you're willing to spend in all the auctions, usually 50 points maximum. Then break it down for each of the 4 attributes. Bid for what you need. If you want your character to be a hot shot in mental powers, then bid heavily in psyche, but don't neglect endurance. Combat is determined by warfare, the last auction, but a good warrior should have some ranking in strength and endurance as well. Stay flexible. Sometimes opportunities open up unexpectedly. Don't pass the chance to be ranked highly in a slow-moving auction, even if you haven't planned on spending quite that many points. Okay, so Psyche is the rating of the character's mental strength. Psyche has also shown the character's force of will and their agility in manipulating pattern, logris, magic, or trump. Why bid on Psyche? Mental power, no matter what your power base, is the battery that runs things. Whether it be pattern, logris, trump, or magic, it's the character with the highest rank in Psyche who will be most feared. So here is this is an extended example. I was going to say, should we go through reading the sample auction? Maybe we won, but sample auction, we'll take a look at the others first. Attribute auction Psyche. So here is an example that actually does go on quite a while here. So Eric Wujik here, the game designer. So here's a game design note. The game designer, speaking to you the first time Amber player. I want to give you the best advice I can before you start building your very own Amber character. Aside from designing the system and game mastering a couple of hundred player characters, I've also played a character or 4. So here are my own words of wisdom for character design in 2 laws of Amber creation. Always get pattern imprint. Always get pattern imprint. If you always are supposed to do it, then do what you have to. Spend the 50 points. No character is complete without pattern. Never sell down attributes. No matter what, don't sell any of your attributes. If you absolutely have to sell attributes, stop at chaos rank. If you need the points, sell down 3 attributes to chaos. Is better than selling 1 down to human level. It's interesting that the game designer here tells you, oh no, you should always take this and do not do this. That's strange. So there's a lot. Okay, there's a lot on psyche here. Strength, character's muscle rates the character's muscles and therefore the damage the character can inflict in hand-to-hand combat, as well as the character's resistance to damage. Normal strength as an Amberite is sufficient to heft and toss around small automobiles. Why bid on strength? If there's any such thing as a sure thing in Amber, it's having a superior ranking in strength. Most combat can go either way, influenced by a number of factors, but once they've got your hands around your enemy's throat, all that counts is strength. So now the characters move on to bidding strength. Endurance. While normal mortals tire after a few minutes of fierce combat, Amberites can keep fighting, fencing, or partying for days on end. In addition, Amberite endurance includes the ability to heal all wounds rapidly, even to the extent of eventually regenerating lost limbs and organs. In a fight of any kind, whether warfare, strength, or psyche, the character with the greatest endurance always has a chance of holding out longer than an opponent with lesser endurance and winning by default. In addition, anyone with less than Amber level endurance will not be able to walk the pattern unassisted. Why bid on endurance? Frankly, you need it for everything. And even if you are somewhat inferior in some battle, a higher rank in endurance, combined with a little patience, virtually guarantees victory. Endurance is the ultimate Amber tiebreaker. So we got a small number of attributes. So we got to make, and this is going to be non-random. So each one of these has got to be important. Kevin says, don't listen to the game master during the auction. Decide what you're going to spend and then don't exceed it. For abilities and friends and allies, don't take any bad stuff. Go for abilities and friends, allies, and don't take any bad stuff. Warfare. All Amberites are trained in warfare. Use of weapons from daggers to machine guns require warfare. All duels of swordplay, the most common way of settling disputes, are judged according to relative warfare of the participants. Warfare also determines a character's knack for tactics and strategy, for everything from the placement and leadership of troops in battle to a quiet game of chess. Why bid on warfare? Face it, most conflict boils down to warfare. There's nothing faster, nothing more decisive. Powers are too slow compared to the flash of a blade. In Amber, the most feared character is the one with the fastest blade, and one with the highest warfare rank. Auction record sheet. Okay, so then there are other powers and stuff like that. But that's how you get your basic stats. Let's go and check out Diceless Combat. Let's see. So we do have, so that was, auction, okay, so character allies, good stuff, bad stuff, and zero stuff, player contributions, sample characters, character freebies, glossary of Amber terms and concepts, player character power. So this explains what the pattern imprint, advanced power imprint is, Logos mastery, advanced Logos mastery, trump artistry, advanced trump artistry, what all of that is. Conjuration. But then here, player's guide to role playing on page 76, and then a game master's guide to the rules of Diceless Combat. So let's go to 76 and 80. At least now we know how we've got our stats. Let's see. Okay, here we go. How to play a character in Amber, at least the headlines here. Love your character. The first rule of Amber role-playing is to love your character. Play in character. Live your character. Don't be afraid of your character's emotions. Characters who laugh and cry, who feel confused or angry, are interesting characters. Keeping secrets. Learn to keep secrets. You start with a basic set of 4 attributes. You start with a basic set of 4 secrets, your attributes. No matter what they are, unless you've ranked first, there's no reason why anyone, except for you and the game master. Oh, no, I didn't realize that. So you are bidding up. Well, how is that? So it says you start with 4 basic secrets, your attributes, no matter what they are, unless you ranked first. So everyone knows who's first, but nobody knows who has the other ones. There's no reason why anyone except for you and the game master should ever know what they are. Other secrets are the powers, shadows, items, and allies that you develop for yourself. So this is going to be diceless, but part of this is that you don't have perfect knowledge. So you don't have perfect knowledge because you know what your stats are, but you don't know what anybody else's stats are. Find your character's voice. A role-playing game is mostly verbal. The game master describes everything and the players respond almost always with speech. Player-to-player interactions. Amber characters are pretty interesting. Usually they're interesting enough to amuse themselves without a game master around. The idea is that players talk to each other, making up details of background and setting a story as necessary while staying in character. This can be pretty challenging. It's an important aspect of the game since groups are often scattered and the game master can only handle one group of players at a time. Role-playing tactics. Using Elder Amberites. Remember when you were just a little tyke and all the adults were giants? It seemed like mommy and daddy were all like gods, all-knowing, all-seeing, and all-powerful. Your character's relationship with the Elder Amberite should be something like that. Maybe something it's more like this. Your character's a high school senior. Or maybe it's something more like this. Your character's a high school senior, a bright kid, maybe good at some things, maybe a star athlete or a chess player or a math whiz. Imagine your high school character is suddenly sent out to summer school at the most prestigious university in the world. One where 4-star generals teach history, presidents and prime ministers teach political science, gold star Olympic athletes coach the sports teams, Nobel Prize-winning scientists are laboratory instructors, and you learn English from the best writers in the world. Do you think you'd feel a bit, shall we say, intimidated? The difference between your character and an elder attribute and an elder Amberite is even greater. So this is an RPG version of diplomacy. Oh, interesting. Because diplomacy, I didn't think about diplomacy in the context of diceless games. So that's a diceless war game. So diplomacy is diceless there. Oh, that's a good point, Neutromancer. That how do you, if you die, or I don't know if you can die, but if you die, how do you bring in a new character? Because the character creation was so influenced by this entire group. It seems like you have to have a group in order to create a character. So we've got, but we've got this relationship. So that's not ranking you among everybody in the world. It's ranking you among your cohort, which I think is going to be important. Okay, so combat. Running combat, the short course. The following details cover the Amber combat system in great detail, most of which you do not need most of the time. Most combat is resolved quite simply using the following 2 steps. Step 1, compare the attribute ranks of the participants in any combat. If there are weapons involved or troops or strategy, then use the weapons warfare attribute. If the combatants are in hand-to-hand fight, usually grabbing each other, then use their strength attributes. If the battle is one of the mind alone, through trump or some other means, then use psychic attributes. 2, the character with the larger attribute rank wins. That's it. Everything else is just a matter of adding details, figuring things out when it's a close call, or making things seem realistic. Combat. Following Zelani's example. It was a very foul blow, about 4 inches below the belt buckle, I'd say, and it left him on his knees. From the 3rd page of 9 Princes in Amber. So Sable Phoenix says, you're immortals in the game. In order to die, at least according to the novels I've read, the Chronicles of Amber, you'd have to come into contact with something that deletes you outright. That's vanishingly rare. So you are allotted a set of points, 100, to buy up to a certain pre-bid rank, and use the remainder to buy powers. Because you've established the ladder. Because you did establish the ladder about what type of rankings everybody's got in order to come into the game. If your character is killed and you want to come in again. That's the first example of combat in Zelani's Chronicle of Amber. No heroic duel, no picture-perfect battle, just a quick, unexpected fist to the other guy's groin. Corwin fights like this all the way to the end. In fact, his last true battle cost him dearly, mostly because, as usual, he fights dirty. It's also unconventional combat. Even in the mindset of duels, where you'd expect combatants to act in some kind of normal way, Zelani always has the characters throwing curves, doing the unexpected. When you read Zelazny, I believe that is. Zelazny, his combat seems to go quickly. He skips over the boring parts and snaps your attention to the eye-openers, the critical decisions, and to the drama. Zelazny writes of Blaze fighting up Mount Colvir and of slaying of hundreds, perhaps thousands, in just a few paragraphs. In one line, half an hour I watched him, and they died, and they died. It is all it takes for Zelazny to get across an episode of combat that would take hundreds of pages to describe in detail. When a battle is important, Zelazny isn't coy about supplying details. When Corwin, the main character, faces his ancient rival Eric, we read, I tried a head cut, which he parried, and I parried his riposte to my heart, and cut at his wrist. The battle goes on with this kind of detail for pages. The point is, Zelazny moves the story along. When combat will help make it more exciting, he concentrates on the details. When it looks like combat will slow Death's story down, it cuts to the chase. As the game master, that's what you want to do. Present your players with combat that is always exciting, not boring with details, no matter how accurate or true to life they might be. You want them to always experience combat as something tense, challenging, and exciting. Okay, is this doing that, though? That would be my question. So you might not know, if you're going into warfare with another character, you might not know what that character's warfare is. So you wouldn't know necessarily, and you're not supposed to find out. So I guess the game master, it doesn't say here that the game master then adjudicates that. I don't suppose this all has to be PvP. But the game master would know your rank, and then we are supposed to give a description or something like that, but we know who's going to win because the character with the larger attribute, we just don't know who that is. So maybe I think it's trying to use the hidden value. It's trying to use imperfect information. Can anyone confirm that? But you will know who's the best. So if you will know if you were going into battle with the person with the highest warfare, because that person stands out, which seems to make sense. So that person stands out among your cohort. They are the best in that. So you know. When two or more characters come into direct conflict, duking it out, things are usually resolved by comparing the two attribute ranks. Then, the one with the higher rank usually wins. Not always, just usually. All right, so here we are adding a complication in here. When Corwin fought Benedict in Guns of Avalon, Corwin knew that Benedict was the better swordsman. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Benedict could beat Corwin in any fair fight. Corwin won. Why? Well, Corwin fights dirty. In this case, Corwin knew about something, about a patch of grass that served as a trap for anyone stepping on it. Benedict didn't know about. Corwin cheated, and Corwin won. In Amber, the characters with the highest attribute rank should win against anyone with a lower rank. Compare this to chess. Chess is a game of pure thought, no luck, just chance. No luck, no chance, just pure strategy. Every one of the billions of people in the world can be ranked in the hierarchy of chess players. You, the player, are probably ranked lower in the scheme of chess masters. Maybe you don't know how to play at all, in which case you'd be so much meat for anybody who knows the rules. Or maybe, like many people, you've just played for fun with friends and relatives. From the point of view, this rule book has such a weird voice because it's so conversational. From the point of view of serious chess players, anyone who just plays for fun, who don't participate in the tournament circuit, is unranked. Okay, so that Noblesse was the other one that was brought up. And I don't know that one. So I'm definitely seeing the influence this had on Noblesse. Warren, confirm. So if I'm Warfare 1 and Warfare 3 is attacking me, I want to eliminate quickly. Now the guy with Warfare 3 also had Endurance 1, so he puts distractions in my way. I disengage. Chase says, you feel like you're Captain Kirk going into a fight, only to find out that you are really just the random red shirt character that dies in Star Trek 3 minutes after beaming down to the planet, LOL. Talking about Noblesse, so they're similar but different as well. So they're very different, but they are similar. So once you get into the chess world, back to our extended chess example here. Once you get into the chess world, things get more formal. Moving up in the ranks, the higher the number, the better the players. Ranked players close together, say a couple of guys ranked 1,150 and 1,070, are so close it's hard to tell which one of them will win any particular game. But take two guys with a spread of a couple hundred points, and you can bet hard money the guy with the higher ranking is going to win. Masters with over 2,000 points can cream everybody else. Grandmasters are even better, and they can do tricks like play 40 people all at the same time while wearing a blindfold. So what if you, the player, had to play a Grandmaster? Let's say for some odd reason you had to play this guy, not for fun, but for something really, really serious, like the fate of the world, and as a side bet, your own life. What do you think you would play? What do you think you should? What do you think? Should you play fair? We'll call your opponent Krumenov, one of Russia's top chess guns. Flat out, the best there is. Here's what you might do. First, you might make a few arrangements, like learning the game, but also getting a team of the finest chess coaches. This is also a strange way to talk about how to run combat. But also getting a team of the finest chess coaches money can buy, and a little microphone in your ear so that you can hear their advice. Then when you set up the room where the game is going to take place, figure out everything Krumenov hates: heat, sound, loud noises, rock music, whatever. Give him the works, but only at critical moments, on and off. And if that wasn't enough, then you go for some real equalizers. Have his wife call mid-game, threatening divorce, madness, and or suicide. Then a high-ranking Russian officer informing Karmanov that he has been accused of anti-state activities, and his victory in the game will be sufficient proof to warrant his arrest and execution. Still not enough? While his back is turned, steal pieces from the board, drug him, and move twice for every move he makes. At least once during some critical move, just as Karmanov reached for a piece, have someone put a gun to his head and offer to blow his brains out if he makes that particular move. Now could you win? Depends. Frankly, if you're a total novice at chess, even these are some extreme this is some extreme methods to go about playing chess here. Depends. Frankly, if you're a total novice at chess, even all these advantages may not assure you a victory. On the other hand, if you're a master rank player yourself, you ought to be able to take him out. And if you're the second ranked player in the world, you should have no problem whatsoever. Silly? Yeah. But that's the way things work in real combat. Armies spend a lot of time and money on military intelligence to pull exactly the same things that you were trying to pull on Karmanov. Psychological warfare, dirty tricks, surprise attacks, and quick flanking maneuvers is what it takes to score victories out of a proportion to the strength of the forces involved. Out of proportion to the strength of forces involved. To use one example from recent history, when you own the air and the other guy doesn't, you bomb the spit out of him. Not exactly fair, sort of on the level of stealing the other guy's chess pieces, but it is pretty effective. The important bit at the bottom of the page. On the next one. Ideal versus the beast, maybe. Choosing the detail. Here are some points to consider when deciding whether combat should be conducted in detail. So how do I adjudicate this? I'm looking for how to adjudicate this. I mean, I get what's trying to be done here, but I feel like I need more information on, okay, because this is actually what I talk about when I'm talking about RPG design. When I'm talking about your choices should matter. That are you winning or losing this game, or overcoming the obstacle or not, or killing the orc or not? Are you doing that based on the roll of the dice? Is this a game about how well you happen to roll dice this session? Or is this a game about how well you thought about doing something? And because you made certain decisions. So in this case of this extreme chess playing right here, you're bringing in advantages against this other guy. So, right. So if we're sitting down 1-to-1 straight on, then it's a comparison of our ranks. And that person is going to win. So if you need to beat somebody who has a higher rank than you do, you've got to do some other things. You've got to make decisions in order to increase your, it sounds like increasing your effective skill. Right? So it seems like then what I would want then is to know, okay, how many more points or whatever do I get in this particular situation if I'm doing some of these extreme chess moves? So this is combat between Cindy, Willie, and the stranger. So it says in the summary, the first number in the column is the character's rank. And the number in brackets is the number of points spent on that attribute. A means amber rank, C means chaos rank, and H means human rank. So is this public information? So Cindy is playing Dorel, Willie is playing Garvin, and then you also have the stranger. So all we know is that Cindy is amber rank in psychic. Endurance, amber rank. Strength, 4th place for 9 points. Well, we do know 4th place. Okay, so we do know first. Okay, I'm not sure. Also, endurance is always the tiebreaker because it fuels the others. This is the planning aspect I mentioned earlier. This the way to stack the deck against a better opponent. People that are number 1 get cocky, and the player can get surprised. Okay, yeah, this is combat as warfare, definitely not combat as sport. That's some of the best drama. Well, okay, do you mean conflict between players or between player characters? Okay, so we do have a description of combat. Choosing details in battle. Let's see. How to role play multiple combat. There are 2 tricks to combat with lots of opponents. First, only is making attackers to gang up on the defender. Let's see what other topics we've got. Judging combat. Judging combat means deciding the outcome based on the relevant factors. This could be an important point right here. Let's look at that. And we got more examples. Lots of examples in here. Okay. Judging combat. As a game master, your job is to moderate the combat. You've got to describe what's happening, give the players option, figure out what the non-player characters are doing, and act as a judge, deciding which actions will succeed and which ones will fail. So the game master will decide which actions succeed and which will fail. So this is a very large book, it seems like, but we're putting a lot on the adjudication of the game master. The most important factor is the attributes. If they're far apart, the whole thing is easy. Close together, and that's where your job as the game master starts to get challenging. Here's the range of possibilities. The player is far, this does say player here. The player, but it may not be making a distinction between player character and players. Most of the time, the game master merely inquires of all players how they would like to proceed. This is the player is far superior to the opposition. For example, on hearing the player character intends to slay each opponent with a neat thrust to the heart, the game master can then respond, 8 bodies lay about you, bleeding but slightly, and you scoff and you scold yourself for having only slightly pricked the heart of one man, since he holds on to life for longer than you had intended. The others are running away. What are you doing? Or if the opposition is of chaos rank or better, the result might be your blade reaches out once, twice, 3 times, each time finding its place deep in the enemy body. Now all of them are badly wounded. Only 2 still stand and face you. What are you doing? Against a single opponent of amber or better rank, the game master could work things out so you break through her defenses with ease and put your blade to her shoulder, ripping through her jacket and cutting her badly. In her eyes, you see fear and defiance. What are you doing? Note that in each case, the player is shown their advantage and then are given a chance to respond with fear. In each case, the player is shown their advantage and is then given a chance to respond with fury or with mercy. In each case, the enemy could be spared, though only one remains alive among the merely human ranked opponents. I guess that was human ranked opponents, the first one. The player is clearly better than the opposition. So that was the player is far superior to the opposition. I mean, that is what we would expect. So this is in a no random way. This is doing what I talk about, saying that doesn't make sense. This is talking about huge different disparities in power level. If you are superior to the opposition, do you want, and this is a game design and philosophy of game question, so there's no right answer, but if the player or if the character is far superior to the opposition, how often do you want them to fail? So Amber is saying they do not fail. If you are far superior to the opposition, you do not fail. Don't have to roll for a critical fumble. This is not MERP or Rollmaster. Well, hey, you are far superior to the opposition. Oh, you rolled a 1? Oh, that's you rolled a 1. Now roll again, because this is an open-ended roll going down. Oh, you rolled a 99. Oh no. So now you're at negative 98. Roll again, open-ended low. Oh my God. You stabbed yourself. That's the King Arthur killing himself with Excalibur moment, right? And do you want that in your game? Some people do. Some people do. And that's fine. I'm just saying in my direction right now in game design philosophy, I'm going in a different direction. So I am okay with this. Like this is a philosophy. You're far superior to the opposition. Therefore, it works. We're not rolling for critical fumble where you accidentally kill yourself when you are far superior. The player is clearly better than the opposition. The difference between being far superior and clearly better is the amount of time it takes to dispatch the opposition. Instead of being able to instantly kill or disable the enemy, the player will have to wear them down. It's possible if the player is overly aggressive, if the character is overly aggressive, and if the defender is cautious enough, the player may also pick up a scratch or two. This could be important if time is important in the RPG. Like I said, we've said often that time, I think, is underused in RPG. So what kind of resource is being used up between being superior and clearly better? It could be time. If time is mattering, then you're having to spend more time, but you still win. The player is very close to the opposition's rank. There are 3 possibilities here. The player can be just a bit better than the opposition, or equal to the opposition, or just a bit worse than the opposition. So the player is very close to the opposition's rank, which means they could be just a bit better, equal, or just a bit worse. In the case where both opponents are opportunistic or aggressive, wounds can go either way. But eventually, if the combat keeps going, whoever has the best attribute will start inflicting more wounds than they receive. When that happens, when it becomes noticeable, that character will start inflicting greater and greater injury. Subtle moves like feints and revealing openings are places where the exact advantages are more plain. See, and this is also where I would want to spend a fair amount of time. When I was talking about that I want in the game for it to be very important if the player is under pressure. So you are under pressure, right? So it sounds like you are not under pressure here. That's the term I've been using. Actually, it was recommended. I was saying in adventuring conditions, but under pressure is better because also we also get a sound effect because of it, and that was recommended in the comment section. So I would say here you are not under pressure. If you are far superior to the opposition and no other intervening situations, you are not under pressure and you're far superior. If you're clearly better and you're not under pressure, we know it's going to happen. Now here, I would say things start to get more interesting because here you are close to equally matched and you've got to figure out how that this is going to be a struggle for you. So this to me should get a lot of attention in gameplay. You could be able to brush past and let the player shine when they are far superior, when they are clearly better. But then all of a sudden, oh, now you're faced with something that's just about like you. Now we're under pressure, and we're going to spend more time here to figure out what happens. As long as a player is conservative, remains defensive, neither gives an opening nor taking anything that is offered, then this combat can last a long, long time. Eventually, other factors like endurance will come into play. Okay, an example of very closely ranked combat. Let's see what this is, because this could be important. This is taken from a session back in this is taken from a session back in March of 1988. Godfrey, played by John Speck, dropped into a tavern of one of the seedier parts of City Amber. Notice how any wounds are based on whether or not tiny deceptions work or fail. There are a lot of people who hate playing diplomacy. We should play that for dinner and board game one night. That's one of those you generated bad fins. That one might be good for playing online. We might be able to do it. GM, a woman, long of leg, approaches Godfrey. She smiles and holds out a remarkable hand. The hand features well-trimmed nails and fencing calluses. She wears the sword at her side, and she looks pretty efficient. What are you doing? I do like not necessarily knowing the other stats. So you never say, because that's supposed to be something that's kind of hidden. Characters know each other's stats, but if players really know the Game Master book or the Monster Manual book, they'll in D&D they'll know stats. But if you don't know, that's good. That's not public information. That's not in-game information. What's his AC? That's not in-game information. I'll shake her hand, smile, and say hello. GM, she also says hello, and she seems to have a very firm handshake. Are you going to test her strength? John says maybe later. She asks if you are familiar with the swordsmen of the castle. It seems to be a reference to your uncles in Castle Amber. John says, yes, I know them. GM, and she asks, are you any good with that thing? She glances at your sword. John says, I hold my own. GM says, and Benedict? She asks, the smiling dropping a bit. How is your skill relative to Benedict? John says, I think Godfrey will just say that I'm in his league. GM says, hardly, she says. I think you exaggerate your own skill, and I think I could cut your heart out. What are you doing? John says, I push back, drawing my sword and main gouge. The GM says, you barely avoid the drink she threw in the direction of your face. She whirls, pulling her blade simultaneously. She's advancing, her blade pricking at you. What are you doing? John says, I defend, holding my ground, but I'm not going to show my full ability yet. GM says, okay, you hold back, but slowing down means you have to retreat several paces and barely escape getting wounded. Are you still faking? John says, no way. Oh, so he was told, but slowing down means you have to retreat several paces and barely escape being wounded. Are you still faking? No way. GM says, okay, you fight the best you can, and you're just holding your ground, parrying her lightning thrusts and having your own attacks blocked. This goes on for a full minute, and you finally see an opening in her defenses. Are you going to attack through the opening? So that seems like that seems to be an important part of this, that you have an option at a certain point for whether you take advantage or not. Are you going to attack through the opening? John says, is it real or is she faking me out? The Game Master says, you can't tell. It looks real. John says, I'll use the opening, but only for a feint. If she goes to parry the feint, then I'll attack. The GM says, she doesn't parry the feint, but instead she uses it to attack. You feel the shock of her blade banging against your sword guard. A close thing. John says, I'm going to be more defensive now to see if she tires at all. GM says, no sign of that. What are you doing? So this also requires a lot of GM adjudication. And that was the part. So we don't have tables here. We were saying that the tables were part of an attempt to adjudicate all kinds of degrees of success of things. So this is really expecting the Game Master to be really involved in coming up with the adjudication of situations on the fly, and the players too. I mean, all this sounds great. Sound great to run a lot of combat like this, even Dungeons and Dragons combat. But how often does it actually happen? GM says, okay. Let me know when you want to do something. She parries the first one, the second one, the third one. John says, okay, now I'll convert this one to a thrust, hoping that she'll be in the habit of reacting one way. GM says, not only does she avoid your thrust, she also gets past your defense. You take a long rake along the outside of your extended forearm. Doing anything different? John says, no, just fighting. GM says, a moment later, she puts up her blade. She asks if you want to withdraw. John says, no way, I attack all the way. So that's another option right there. So that now the option came up to her. No way, I attack all the way. GM says she barely defends in time, and you force her to pull her foot back half a step. John says, am I closer now? A bit. You've been fighting at the tip of your swords. You're closer now. John says, I'll try for a bind. She pushes back. Using my greater strength, I'll force her blade out of line, opening up for attack. The GM says, with greater strength than yours, perhaps because of that wound on your arm, she circles your blind around, pushing your blade out of line with the attack. So I'm guessing that she is a little bit better than John, because she's wounded John. But what exactly that wound means? See, I do want more mechanical information about what that wound means. Is that changing? Is that shifting the degree of power between the two? I need to think about that. So this is Diceless, and it seems highly narrative. John says, rats, I'll pull my sword back. GM, that opens you up. John says, I'll use my main gouge to parry. GM says, good work. You succeed in blocking her thrust before it entered your armpit. You're relatively safe again. John says, if she extended that far, she might be vulnerable. I'll circle her blade and go in for an attack on her hand. GM says, you managed to prick her thumb. A small line of blood appears. John says, I'll pull back and see how she reacts. Again, she offers you the opportunity to withdraw. Seeing as we're both wounded, she says. I accept. She smiles wide, embraces you, and seems really pleased. Andrew says, good point about requiring a lot from players. Lots of downtime in this type of game, as well as separate encounters, are adjudicated. Energy levels can ebb and flow in these types of games. It's requiring a lot of the game, both the players and the game masters. Yep. The player's going to have to be willing to describe something like that and be capable. A player is significantly inferior to the opposition. So if the player is significantly inferior to the opposition, the result, but it did say that we don't necessarily know who was going to win up here, because the choices that were made. There were several choices where one player could have let somebody go or press the attack or something like that. It seemed like the female swashbuckler was better. Whatever her name was. So if the player is significantly inferior to the opposition, the results of the combat depend on what stance the player has taken. If the stance was defensive, the game master might say you stop a flurry of attacks and find yourself pushed to the limits of your skill. See, I want to see a modifier. I want a bit more mechanics. I want to see some type of how I can adjust myself if I go full defensive. You stop a flurry of attacks and find yourself pushed to the limit of your skill and bleeding from a cut from the back of your hand. What are you doing? An opportunistic choice where the player has chosen to attack with caution will have your thrusts are stopped with precision, while your enemy attacks seem to be pushing past your blocks all too easily. There are 2 cuts on your sword arm. You're lucky that thrust to your eye merely cut your cheek. What are you doing? Against a superior, the player who charges in with an all-out attack is going to be reeling. Your blade does no harm, and I also want more information on what all the wounds are. But again, it just seems very free form. Your blade does no harm and is extended too far to defend you as the enemy cuts open your shoulder, pulling back to slash your chest and thrust your midsection. What are you doing? The player is far worse than the opposition. If the player is of human rank, if a player is of human rank and has attacked blindly, their survival depends on the mercy of the enemy. Otherwise, there'll be nothing left but to make funeral plans. If the player has at least a chaos rank or a bit of good stuff, so at least chaos rank, a bit of good stuff. So the good stuff can make up for some things. Or took a really defensive stand. Again, what's the difference between I take a defensive stand and I take a really defensive stand? Then the game master might announce, with blinding speed, the enemy's sword flashes through your feeble defenses and enters deeply into your body. You don't even feel pain yet, but you know you won't live through another thrust like that. What are you doing? Obviously, there's no point in continuing this fight. The player should seize any means of escape or surrender or do whatever it takes to avoid getting killed. Characters at amber rank or better, no matter how fine the enemy, will have at least two serious wounds. Before their lives are threatened. That seems like an important piece of information. Maybe we talk about wounds and things like that in other places, but you will have at least two serious wounds before your lives are threatened. That seems like a consequence. Here's your consequence. Example of player outmatched. Let's see. Cheating. Sword battles and warfare. Sword moves and chaos. Main combat choices. We're going a little bit long here, but I kind of want to strength combat. So is this the defensive options? Main combat choices. Sword moves and choices. So this is, I think this is addressing. Zero the Blade says, sounds like you need to know sword play of your region, and otherwise you can't explain. Excuse me. It sounds like you need to know the sword play of the region you're in, otherwise you can't explain it. Yeah, it also seems like that your knowledge of that as a player does matter. Warren says all these people were given clear warnings from the game master that these people are more powerful in the stat contest. Yes. From my point of view, the game master knew the winner. Yeah, so the winner was preordained. It's determined because we know the game master knows who's actually better, but was just going along with describing the fight. Because I like that. And again, you just know that in this game, I'm going to continue the fight because I might roll that 100 critical hit. You're just not going to. You can't rely on dice. So main combat choices. I want some more mechanics. I don't see this is too not random for me. I want some randomness. I'm talking about eliminate, but I think this is an important read through. Especially that's why I'm going to go a little bit longer, even though I've got things to do, because I want to look at this because I want to apply this to what we're doing with RPG design, because the idea here I am down with. And that's why, like, putting people, but I think I need more mechanics. I think there could be room when we're talking about combatants are easily matched. That's when you're under pressure. That's to me when you start using some dice and you start to add in a little bit of random element, because some person might get something that the other person doesn't. So I'm not, so in that place where I'm like, well, no, that might not be preordained. And I want some more mechanics here, I think. So main combat choice is defensive. Any move where your major concern is saving your own neck is considered defensive. Usually the opposition has to be clearly superior to you in warfare before they can hurt you in a defensive position. So putting something, so if you've got certain moves and you've got ranks of clearly superior and so forth, I think that would help you. Purely defensive. Again, in our very narrative kind of way. Pure defense minimizes your chance of getting hurt. Now, somebody else, elsewhere it said like very defensive, but this is pure defensive. Measured retreat. The idea is that you back off, hoping your opponent will come after you, pushing a bit too far and creating an opening. Works two ways, because you're protecting yourself, and if the enemy doesn't follow you, then you've got a clean chance to escape. Hasty armor defense. When in doubt, pick up something large to use as a shield, or squeeze yourself into a protected position and make it into makeshift fortresses. It might work, it might not, but it beats being skewered. Not only is it a low-risk option, but the first blows will probably be absorbed in the future and by the furniture in use. Main combat choices: offensive, fight. Most fighters take this stance. It means you fight in reaction of your opponent, taking advantage of openings, defending against attacks, and holding your ground. When both combatants choose fight, it means the battle will be determined purely by warfare, and pretty quickly too. Or a feint. The idea is that you pretend to strike in one direction, and then when the opponent goes to defend, you strike in the other direction. So if this is not purely narrative, it does seem like you're supposed to have these options. So I would put the players, even if they're not going to be describing feints and repostés and all of that, they need like a reference card, at least in the beginning, to say, hey, these are your moves. So the feint, the idea is you pretend to strike in one direction, then when the opponent goes to defend, you strike in another direction. If you're a lot worse than the enemy, this is going to be super obvious. Expect to take damage. If you're a lot better than the enemy, they'll either fall for your ruse, which lets you hurt them, or they'll chicken out and retreat. Finally, if the two of you are pretty even in warfare, this is going to depend on a judgment call on the part of your opponent. The enemy guesses wrong, and you'll score a wound. Okay. If you're even in warfare, this is going to depend on a judgment call for the part of the opponent. The opponent doesn't know if you're attacking, so there's structure implied here. Yeah, Neutromancer says, it sounds like there is rock, paper, scissors, but they're not describing it that mechanically. Maybe, yeah, so, Truth Master. The truth is, as a GM would sell the idea to potential players that only those interested in this kind of play. You wouldn't push someone against their idea of play. Those that enjoy it a lot. I am sure of that. There's probably, and I haven't really looked at it, but I bet there is a fanatical following for this type, a small but fanatical kind of role for this type of role playing. Chase Street says, I like having the slight randomness where a character can prevail against a superior opponent on very rare occasions. Like, it could be a slightly, to me, I would say slightly better opponent when they're closely matched. However, it needs to be a very small chance. Otherwise, you get the old AD&D running joke of a fighter rolling a natural 20 with a Vorpal sword and yelling, I rolled a 20, I cut off Odin's head. Right, exactly. That's exactly what I want to eliminate. Particularly on like a 20. It happens too often. The revealed opening. Deliberately open yourself up, making something that looks like a mistake or otherwise try to sucker your opponent into coming a little hard too fast. If your opponent is equally matched or has less skill, then it will look exactly like a real vulnerable opening. If they take the bait, it's an opportunity to do damage. On the other hand, if your opponent is a lot better than you, the trap will be obvious, at which point it may be you who is in danger. Now I'm wondering if we could incorporate some of these different attacks into or different moves into Fated Edge. I got to think about that. Advance. Steady, relentless pressure. You move forward, pushing all openings, shoving your opponent back. Psychologically a great move. Show your confidence. Intimidate the enemy. All of which will work, and you should damage the enemy if you're really better. If you're evenly matched or outmatched, this is when a move that'll set you up. If you're evenly matched or outmatched, then this is a move that will set you up for getting hurt. All-out attack. You launch yourself at the enemy, forgetting about defending yourself. You're willing to take a scratch if necessary. Kill. A cocky, foolhardy thing to do. Hope that you're really a lot better than your opponent, in which case this option will definitely turn things your way, and you'll score the most damage possible. Do we have any mechanics for that? On the other hand, if you're relatively equal or worse, this is the choice that lets you collect the most serious wound. Combat modifiers. Feigned inferiority. Feigned superiority. So since you're deliberately moving more slowly and reacting with less skill, you may take slightly more damage than you might otherwise. On the other hand, there's a lot to be said for getting the enemy to incorrectly evaluate your skills. Feigned superiority, to try to pretend to be better than you actually are. It's helpful to have a model to imitate. If you're a lot better than your opponent, you've got a good chance of pulling this off and no increased chance of taking any damage. When your opponent is significantly better than you, this is a good way to get killed. The risk is high, and unless the ruse succeeds right away, the style you imitate won't make up for your vast disadvantage. Combat modifiers, combining strength and warfare. Beat or blind. Rough housing. Bait and switch. And then combat of strength. Psychic battles. I don't think we need to go through all the different types of battles. Yeah, almost all the moves seem to say, if you're better, it could work. Otherwise, you'll get hurt. Yeah, this game could also go nowhere with the wrong group. Because you also need to understand that, especially since it's operating on different scales of time. I'm thinking that, like, what exactly is one move? Sometimes it's one particular sweep of a sword or something like that. Other times it seems like it's the movement of a whole army, because it talks about like strategy and whole army movement too. So, like, what can I accomplish with a single, let's call it an action at the moment? What can I accomplish with a certain action? That seems to be very open-ended here. It could be one slash. It could be an exchange of blows over several seconds. It could be the movement of an army. It feels like. Inspect other factors in combat, inspecting the ground. And obviously, this is a lot about combat, which seems to be, which is natural. Combat and magic take a lot of rules to explain. We're not seeing some of these things that we're not seeing rules for just generally taking actions or jumping over a pit at the moment. Inflicting, when I hear is inflicting injury, warning, some of these descriptions of wounds and damage are pretty disgusting. All right. Well, I'm okay with it too, but it's going to be, as long as everybody is having some idea about, in that particular moment, in that particular call, how much can be accomplished in a single turn or action, we could see. Inspecting the ground. Good stuff, bad stuff, and zero stuff. No matter how good a character may be, a point of bad stuff can turn things around. Likewise, a character with a point of good stuff can usually get out of the most disadvantageous combat. Good stuff and bad stuff are never used up. They come into use every combat, giving the game master the opportunity to swing around any event that might be dependent on luck or chance. So they're telling you they're incorporating luck by having good stuff or bad stuff. Enemies, allies, and other interested parties. So weapons. If it's handy, you can get it moving forward toward the enemy. You can call it a weapon. Amberites love throwing things at their opponent. Small, hard things are usually projectiles. Big, heavy things are missiles. Fluids, dirt, and powders are good for heaving into the eyes. Cloaks, rugs, or large flexible things can be used to entangle or to throw over the other guy's head. In other words, Amberites use whatever they've got. Swords, blades, and edged weapons. There's a special category for this kind of weapon. Extra hard. Do no more damage. There's a special category for this kind of weapons. Extra hard. Do no more damage than usual, but are resistant to breakage and can sometimes cut through defenses. Okay, so I'm guessing your sword is extra hard. Double damage weapons tend to increase damage, so a slash might become life-threatening. I wonder if they're just missing the G there, if that's actually supposed to be life-threatening. Deadly damage weapons take a slash into a maim, or increase life-threatening into mortal. Arrows and crossbow bolts are considered edged weapons. Impact and force. So there's some additional mechanics someplace. So if you find something that bothers you, stop reading and skip to the section on armor. The descriptions of damage get progressively worse from level to level. In Amber, wounds are part of the story. Now, which I also want. We talk about that quite a bit. If you're taking wounds, we want that to facilitate the story itself. Or I do. I don't necessarily want hit points of damage. I mean, hit points work okay in some respects, but I'd much rather have the wounds be part of the story. Wounds are clues, clues that point to the superior combatant in a contest of skill, clues telling a character that things are not going well. If a character gets a scrape, that means the next blow might be a cut or a slash. A stab will likely be followed by something more serious. Here are 8 levels of injury. So we do have levels of injury. 1, non-impact hints and near misses. 2, scratches, bruises, and scrapes. These wounds will never get in the way of a character's actions and are only really noticeable when the character has leisure time to tend to them. Cuts, pricks, and sprains, an open wound, bleeding, and painful. While it doesn't have any impact on the character's other attributes, it's an indicator that everything is not going well. A blood loss from a cut could eventually drain the character of into a life-threatening state, but it's pretty unlikely. Usually the blood coagulates and stops the flow before the loss is serious. So we've got cuts, wounds from swords, backs, impact, gun, blast, and burn. Slashes, stabs, and other serious blood loss. Now things are getting serious. Without first the aid of some kind, the character will start feeling the loss of blood. Even slamming a hand or a bit of cloth into the gushing wound will help the situation. No one, not even an Amberite, can remain conscious if they lose too much blood. Well, I'm interested to know what that is too. It might be cleaned up and more modern. Did it come after this game? I guess you said it came after this game because you see the influences here. Life-threatening wounds. This is a major sword cut, a knife stroke, a bullet wound that passes through a critical part of the body. Blood loss will be very serious. A serious wound will generally slice open a significant artery enough the body's veins to cause a lot of blood to escape the body. Normal people can survive this kind of bloodlust for up to 7 minutes. It doesn't change according to the person's size or shape. Bigger people have a bit more blood, but also bigger arteries that pump blood faster. Smaller people might have less blood, though not that much less, but they also have smaller arteries. So 7 minutes is pretty much standard. 6, maim or sever, the severing of a hand, the putting out of an eye, something that will permanently, well, not permanently for most Amberites, but you get the idea, disfigures the character. 7, mortal wound. When Brand was released from his imprisonment, the knife wound to his kidney had been much less fatal. I would want to have these categories available to me as the game master as well. The knife wound to his kidney would have been fatal had he not received immediately critical medical attention. Neglected, he would have surely died. Characters with mortal wounds instantly have their attributes reduced. Death blow, a direct, completely fatal blow to the heart or brain. Death dealing is usually only when a character completely overmatches the other. Of course, there's always murder, a deliberate killing stroke to a helpless victim. If you've got anyone unconscious, paralyzed, mind-locked, or otherwise out of commission, then killing them is easy, so long as it's understood that it would be cold-blooded murder. In Amber, we don't have any specific gauge of how much a character is hurt or wounded, any more than there is such thing in real life. However, just as in real life, characters will tend to notice certain signs from their bodies, telling that the injuries must be fixed. Here are a few examples. Your skin feels cold and clammy, and you're sweating an awful lot. What are you doing? We do have a section on armor here. Armor can do things. First, it can deflect a blow, saving a character from all but minimal damage. Second, armor can slow down or reduce the impact of a blow, lessening the damage. For example, Julian's white lacquer armor is impervious to bullets, so it covers most of his body. Hits from bullets tend not to bother him. Cutting at Julian's armor with a sword is also pretty useless. The attacker may succeed in striking Julian, but the armor will prevent the weapon from doing any damage. Armor only protects what it covers. Conventional armor will deflect any but all but the best blows. Therefore, a character would have to deliver something serious like a life-threatening wound before the weapon would penetrate the armor. Even then, the effort of punching through the armor material would soften the force of this impact so the wound would be less. Like anything else in combat, death is part of the story. It shouldn't be used unless it has some point. No Amber death goes unpunished or unexamined. Amberites are tough suckers, though. They are very, very, very hard to kill, almost impossible to kill. How do you kill an Amberite? Murder, bloodshed, misadventure. Combat versus mortality, closing combat. Oh, so then we go to, here is success or failure. Let me look at that quickly. Dungeon Master says you can also trick an opponent into a shadow universe where the laws of science and magic give you an edge. The number one question put to any game master is, does it work? Whenever a player character tries to do something, from opening a door to creating a universe, it's up to the game master to decide whether or not the character is successful. And player characters are only the beginning, since the game master has to answer the same question silently about anything attempted by any of the dozens of non-player characters operating behind the scenes. Does it work? In Amber, the answer is almost always yes. Player characters or otherwise, almost always succeed at everything they try. Of course, most things are just the little things that we do every day. Characters are usually successful at walking, talking, reading, eating, playing, and sleeping, just like people in real life. When it comes to using powers like pattern or magic, most of the things the characters try will succeed. There are exactly three exceptions. Three cases where characters can fail. There are when a character has bad stuff, lacks the ability, or is opposed by some other character. So bad stuff. The character with bad stuff will occasionally experience the difficulties associated with ill fortune. This is an on-again, off-again kind of thing. How much failure is inflicted on characters depends on how much bad stuff is involved. Inability. An action can fail if a character lacks the qualifications, overreaches their capacity, or if the character is trying something for the first time. At the point of character creation, the players are allowed to fill in the details of the character's life and life experiences and skills. The player always deserves the benefit of the doubt, so any part of the background could provide the needed skill, assume that it does. However, if something in the character's history indicates the opportunity to learn the skill, then assume that the player character never picked it up. For example, a player may not have a specified computer training. However, if the character's background includes a couple of years of study at a modern university at a fairly sophisticated technological shadow, it's fine to assume the character must have picked up some computer training. Perhaps not enough to computer training. That's very early 1990s, right? You have computer training. Perhaps it's not enough to reprogram a computer or to build a security cracked program from scratch, but it's enough to know the basics of exploring database and getting online in a network. As far as the inability to use powers, characters often fail as they experiment with new aspects. Look, for example, at expert auto mechanic. The mechanic can fix most problems, but will run into difficulty when faced with a car imported from a different shadow reality. It's not that the mechanic lacks the skill, it's just dealing with a totally new car requires a bit of experimentation and a good chance of occasionally screwing up. All right, we have an example here. But again, that seems like free-form kind of adjudication. But okay, also opposition. The most common reason for a player character to fail is that they are being opposed. I'm wondering if I can incorporate that kind of thing. So the three reasons that you would fail. You have inefficient skill. So bad stuff is like a wild card. So you could say maybe like wild card. There's something weird about this particular situation that causes you to fail because you've got something weird about this situation. You don't actually have the ability to succeed. I want a bit more mechanics in here telling me exactly what my skill level is, even if only I know that, so I can figure out whether or not I can actually do this security cracking program or something. Or you might fail if someone is opposed to you. Wait, what does that say here? Decisions versus randomness. Okay, well, let me try to look at that too. The most common reason for a player to fail is when they are being opposed. When a character says, I plunge my sword through the creature's neck, it automatically succeeds if the creature is helpless. However, most of the time, the creature is not cooperating. A character's attempt at murder is usually contested by some of the other characters' attempts to escape. They can't both succeed, and the result is a matter of the game master's judgment. Contests in Amber are often waged without the characters even being aware of it. Player characters will sometimes be opposed by hidden elder Amberites or offstage lords of chaos. In these cases, the player character could easily see these failures as due to bad luck or inability. So decisions versus randomness. The so-called random events seem to be part of our day-to-day lives. It's just that upon examination, there are few things that are really left up to chance. No matter what the choice, event, action, or environment, a game master can eventually figure out a logical, non-random solution. Unfortunately, that word eventually means that the game masters often don't have time to resolve things logically. They've got to fall back on a few role-playing tricks. To me, the random element is adjudicating everything that we don't have to adjudicate, that we can't adjudicate with the game rules. Yes, we're taking into account this, and this, but there might be a whole bunch of other things that might also influence the situation to some small degree. So that's when the random element comes in. Bane's Son says, like all early 90s RPGs, Amber has bad layout and could have used a good editor to organize it in a better way. Yes. Yeah, the good old make a huge backstory to make sure you have all the skills. Yeah, I'd want to get to that faster. Using good stuff, zero stuff, and bad stuff. Choosing random events. Random events usually involve a range of possibilities. Randomness could be just a choice between two outcomes or almost infinite variety of personalities that reside in any given human being. For example, on an urban street in the city of Shadow Earth, the range of encounters varies from beggars to bandits, children to the aged, though limited to those of both old enough and young enough to be around the street. Yet why should it be random? A novelist or screenwriter doesn't pick a random encounter. No, they pick whatever random event is most interesting and do the one that works best to move the story along. I mean, I agree with that. Why would they want any boring events or purposeless events or events that repeat themselves? That's the argument against actual random events, right? Or random encounters. Let's do the same. It's the same as in role playing. All the game master has to do is visualize or list the possibilities and select the one choice that seems to work best for the current role playing situation. Game masters and powers, role playing with the gloves off. So these are the different adjudicating powers and stuff. Let me just go back to the table of contents for just a second. So we were looking at Guide to Combat Inflicting Injury. Oh, yeah. Then we were down here in Guide to Amber Mechanics, Guide to Powers, Game Master's Guide to Campaign Construction, Elder Amberite. So I guess that's people, your non-player characters and campaigns. All right. Well, that's a lot of discussion. I'm going to have to think. I mean, I understand why this is going in the direction that it is. I mean, it makes some of the things that we've talked about. It makes those points. I see that a lot. It's not. I want something a bit crunchier in a certain, in a real sense, and also I'm not completely against the random element. So, what would it be like? Also thinking about it, like I said, if you take this amber and you started to incorporate a bit more randomness into it, if you gave it more structure. If you gave it more mechanics, more structure, and also did have some type of element for a small degree of randomness, especially when people who are very evenly matched are fighting, because that could be something could go one way or another. I'm going to think about this a lot. I think this was the perfect time to go ahead and get into this because this was, I think, a very good continuation of a discussion from yesterday. This one goes to too extreme, to too much of extreme to me. Could be fun to try out, but to me, for a system, this does go too far in one direction. I mean, this is the ultimate, I suppose. The ultimate in narrativist. So it's not simulationist and it's not gamist. This is very narrativist. So we don't have any type of things with the combat, like wound damage or anything like that. So this is very narrativist. In fact, probably extreme narrativist. And it's removal of all randomness. So there's no random element and it's extremely narrative. Warren says planning. Yes. All right. Well, I am out of here. So this was a long morning grind. We're going to be back here tonight. Don't forget, check out Goodnight Sword. I'll put the link to the Goodnight Sword Kickstarter. We'll be back here at 7 p.m. Central Time. So that's just over 7 hours away. Man, I got stuff I got to get done. So we'll be here in 7 hours. And then we will conclude with a wind down tonight and celebrate the end of the Goodnight Sword Kickstarter. We'll have discussions. We'll talk more. We can just hang out. We'll have a good time. Please do like the stream. Enjoyed hanging out with you. Enjoyed the discussion as always. Go be constructive, be creative, be productive, and grind on. Later, everybody.